right now with their PowerPoints. And I do want to share my screen with your whiteboard. And I do want to break down your listening so that you can really identify that when I break listening down, one of the skills is called immediate recall. How much information can you retain right then and there? Then we have delayed recall. How much can you retain 48 hours later? Statistics show us that after a 10-minute lecture, 24 hours later, you retain only 50%. And this is without note taking. And then 48 hours, you retain only a quarter of it. So your listening doesn't really have a good delayed recall statistical value. Then we have following directions. Now, I know most of us use GPS, but if you were given verbal directions, can you recall what to do after you've heard them? You know, and just take it. And every day, if you don't have your GPS and you ask somebody, you know, where's Tarrytown Road? And they say, oh, go down a little bit, take a left. I don't know how many lights it is. It's about a few. What's a few? We can't even give directions to even follow directions. But there's certain game shows where it's not written and you have to listen to the question in order to answer it. So there are many areas in our life where we're not going to be able to read. We're only going to be allowed to follow the directions. And then we have language usage. Can you understand the way a word is used in a particular sentence? So for example, if I said the sentence, what does turn mean in the sentence, one good turn deserves another? In 5 seconds, can you give me a synonym? So one good deed, and just think how many times someone may use a word and you may not have understood it correctly because you're using one of the other definitions of it. And then we have comprehension. After about 45 minutes without notes, can you recall what was said in a general idea as well as in details? And this is just relying on your listening, being in the room. Now, I am going to put up onto your Blackboard, 10 habits that we tend to have, some of, and ways to improve. And I'll explain it also at the end of this lecture. So we're going to go back to your PowerPoints. And we left off here. So we have 4 listening styles. And your book does not, the PowerPoints don't advance by definition. So I'm going to take you to your book. And we're going to be on page, bottom of 187, it begins. And the words that we're going to take a look at. I must be missing it. Hold on. Never find what I want. I missed the whole section. 189. So these are the 4 different ways that we listen and we respond. So the listening styles of a task-oriented listener, we see listening as a transactional and prefer to be brief, to the point, and accurate messages from others so they can focus on task completion. So if you're a speaker, you want to be empathetic for task-oriented listeners. Step 1, step 2, step 3. These are task-oriented. And if you want your listeners to be more to the point, having accurate messages with the least amount of vagueness. As a speaker, you want to guide your messages toward those task-oriented listeners. So relational listeners view listening as an opportunity to build and maintain relationships. So they look to connect different dots. They look to be a little bit more analytic. They're more, what are the similarities? What are the differences? What are the pros? What are the cons? What are the likes? What are the dislikes? So sometimes you may be in a class and you're going to be a relational listener. And the PowerPoint here, I just realized, has an incorrect spelling. It is relational listeners. It's on page 189. So maybe in a history class, I have to listen to relate ideas, relate what happened to the aftermath, what happened after. Critical listeners focus their attention on the accuracy and consistency of what another person says. It's more like, we call them wordsmiths, really paying attention to the exact verbiage. And you're critical of what they're saying and how they're saying it. You're looking at the logic of it, the facts of it. So that's what a critical listener. Maybe ethos, you're looking at the person saying it, the credentials saying it. Analytical listeners prefer to withhold their judgment until they have considered all the facts and sides of an issue, taking time to carefully evaluate information and details before forming an opinion about what they have heard. So when you analyze, that's what you do before you write your research paper. You analyze everything that you've researched and you're deciding what to filter and put into your paper. So you're not just one of these, you're all of these. So sometimes you're listening to get the job done. Sometimes you're listening as a relational listener, and you are comparing ideas of, just think about when you had taken an English 101 or 102, compare and contrast, and that's critical. You're really listening to details, and analytical. You're taking in all the information, and it takes time to do this last one. So, before you write your research paper, you've taken in all the notes of the class, all the listening and the reading, and you have time to analyze from both perspectives or all perspectives. So gender, women are more likely to use people-oriented styles, and men are more likely to use time-oriented styles. So the ones here, let's go back. So relational, it could be more people-oriented. Analytical could be more people-oriented. Effective listening varies across cultures. So in the United States, we are time action-oriented listeners. And, we go to class on time, right? We go to job interviews on time. And collectivistic cultures are more valued around the people rather than I don't have time for you, which tends to be us because we have to make so much time in our day to get everything done. So how do we improve? Well, here are the areas that we use while we're listening, and we're going to go into each one specifically. We do have what's called selective listening. We do have these invisible earlids that when we don't want to listen to something, and then when the teacher says the next thing I say is on the test. So when somebody says clean your room, you're like, So we do have selective listening. We tend to do what's called eavesdropping, listening in on other people's conversations. We'll go into that pseudo listening. Yeah, yeah, got it. And then go home to try to do that math problem and you don't got it. Aggressive listening, you have a hidden agenda. I have more important things to say than you, so I'm listening to have you see if you make an error. You're more judgmental. And narcissistic is that you are definitely have more on your mind. So let's go over these. So selective listening, taking in only those bits and pieces of information that are immediately salient and dismissing the rest. So that's what selective listening is. So at that moment, the information is not salient. So to overcome a selective listening, practice techniques for enhancing attention, like mental breathing. Yes, I understand I'm hungry. I will worry about that later. Yes, I understand I have a physics test, but I'll study 10 minutes before the class starts. And that's how you take it away from your immediate need. Eavesdropping is intentionally and systematically setting up situations so that you can listen to private conversations. I am hoping this is not something that we do, and eavesdropping can be done in a non-intentive manner. You walked in and your mother and father were talking about something that you might not have wanted to hear or that you were meant to hear. But your book has this definition. It is unethical, it is inappropriate. It may not happen in your everyday, where it might happen in a workplace environment more. Pseudo listening, behaving as if you're paying attention, but you're really not. I think we all know what that means. And aggressive listening, also called ambushing, attending to others solely to find an opportunity to attack them, listening just to that one thing. They say, oh, that's not true because blah, blah, blah said, or that's the wrong way you pronounce this. And we call them trolls. And I know every day the value of that word is different. People who post online messages designed to annoy others. That would be online. But if you're aggressively listening, you're just listening to have a judgment or to make jump on someone when they're made a mistake. And here you are self-absorbed in the narcissistic listening, ignoring what others are saying and redirecting the conversation to yourself, which is very political. It's a great politician changing the subject matter. So your book has all these wonderful terms for this listening chapter. And as well, I'm going to also share with you at this moment 10 keys to effective listening. And it'll take me just 2 seconds to pull it up. Hold on, I'm going to put you on pause for a minute.